It's my pleasure to introduce our very special guest, Debbie Babitt. She was copy director for 2 major Manhattan publishing companies and has worked as an actress, a playwright, and a drama critic. Her first novel, Saving Grace, was named one of the most anticipated thrillers of 2021 by She Reads, and voted a best debut of 2021 by Suspense magazine. First Victim, her second novel, was a buzz book of 2022. Her feature articles have appeared in Crime Reads, Suspense magazine, and Mystery and Suspense magazine. She's a member of Mystery Writers of America, International Thriller Writers, and Sisters in Crime. Debbie and her husband, a criminal defense attorney, divide their time between New York and Florida. And without further ado, please welcome Debbie Babitt.
First of all, can everyone hear me? Yes. Good. Thank you, Christina, for that wonderful introduction. It's very exciting to be here, and I thank you all for coming, especially coming to the library. Libraries have always held a special place in my heart. From the day I first got my library card, I was so excited to go to the library and get all these books that I've been dying to read. So off I trundled to the checkout desk, and the librarian said, well, first of all, I had so many books, she couldn't really see me under the books, and she said, are you really going to read all those books? And I said, you bet. And I did. Years later, I wrote the first part of Saving Grace, my debut novel, at the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue in New York City. And my third novel, The Man on the Train, which is coming out in May 2024, a chapter takes place in the Montauk Library for people who know the eastern end of Long Island. My character goes to the library and remembers when he was a kid, when it was a bookmobile. And then it moved to a cottage on the grounds of the Montauk Community Church. Came a very long way. So it seems fitting somehow that now I'm at the West Palm Beach County's premier library in Florida, almost coming full circle, I guess, in a way, to talk about First Victim, my second book. And I always am asked the question, how do you get your idea and how does your book start? For me, and it could be my acting background, it always starts with character. A character starts talking to me, and his or her voice stays in my head, and I hear the voice when I wake up in the morning and when I go to sleep at night, and this is true. And little by little, they reveal their world to me. And so for those of you who have not yet met my protagonist, Alice, and for those of you who have met her, I'd like to take you into her world. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about First Victim. From her bench at Manhattan Supreme Court in New York City, the Honorable Alice D. McCarty has seen the most hardened criminals pass in her courtroom. But there's something about this trial and this defendant, charged with killing a pregnant woman, that affects her as no other case has. Her stressful home life is adding to her anxiety as well. But Alice is also harboring a secret that, if it came out, could have dire and far-reaching consequences, both personally and professionally. But that's not the only secret Alice is keeping. Unbeknownst to Alice, her daughter Alexis has begun a search for her biological father. That search, and the secrets Alice is keeping, even from herself, will lead to a tiny town all the way upstate New York's North Country, where Alice will finally have to confront her long ago past and choose between justice and revenge. A hush falls over the courtroom as a door to the right of the bench opens. The defendant stands there, flanked on either side by the 2 corrections officers who escorted him from the pens. From here, Louise Ramos, the court officer standing guard nearest the door, takes up the slack. Escorted by Louise, who's been with Alice for years, the defendant walks into the courtroom. Hobbles in would be more accurate, constrained as he is by the cuffs and shackles binding his wrists and ankles. The chains seem incongruous against the off-the-rack blue suit that looks a size too small for him. Even from the bench, Alice can see that he's built, his linebacker shoulders straining through the material of his suit jacket. With a salt and pepper mustache and a beard that matches his thick head of wavy gray hair that's partially held back in a ponytail, he looks like an aging biker. That's a surprise. It's rare that an older defendant passes through her courtroom. Criminals who stand trial are usually in their teens or early 20s, a time in their lives when they possess the least amount of impulse control. William Henry Young appears to be completely in control. Alice isn't the only one who can feel all that coiled energy beneath his submissive posture. Catherine Forster, the prosecutor, looks nervous as he's liberated from his chains. Despite the 6 officers, 4 males and 2 females strategically positioned throughout the courtroom, the maximum number due to the violent nature of the crime, all armed and ready to act should the defendant attempt a repeat of what he did at Rikers. As if sensing the judge's eyes on him, Young raises his head. The smile transforms his face, making him appear almost human. They rarely look like the monsters they are. Very good. Her heart pounds as she runs. The punishing pace feels good. She pushes herself to go faster, waiting for the moment when the physical overtakes the mental, obliterating everything else. When her body goes on autopilot and her mind becomes a blank, a sign that the endorphins are starting to kick in. But the runner's high has been eluding her for weeks. And tonight, for the first time, she lost her temper with Charles. When she arrived home from court, he was still in his pajamas. After she finally got him into the tub, he refused to let her wash him. He kept flailing his arms, which sent water splashing all over her and the floor. Alice became enraged and told him that if he didn't behave, he wouldn't get any supper. He started to cry, and she was immediately guilt-stricken over her harsh words. Eventually, between the 2 of them, she and the aide, Larry, got him bathed, fed, and settled down for the night. By then, it was after 7. With the days growing shorter, Alice knew she had only a small window before daylight ended. She was usually back from her run by that time, safely tucked away inside before night fell. After weighing the pros and cons, the need for a stress-relieving outlet won over her dread of the dark that had begun in childhood. Now she regrets her decision. She's completed only 1 loop around the running track, and most of the light has been leached from the sky. Darkness is coming on fast, mitigated only by the silver ribbon of moonlight casting a ghostly glow over the reservoir. The breeze has picked up, rustling the leaves of the trees she passes. The endless chirp of crickets that she rarely hears from inside her house with the windows closed and the AC going full blast, drowning out everything else until the monotonous drone is the only thing she hears. She runs faster. If she could only outrun her thoughts. As she speeds past the midway point where Central Park divides the east and west sides of the city, she notices a group of double-crested cormorants in the middle of the water. They're floating on a broken-off section of the white pedestal that holds the reservoir's century-old fountain. Alice looks over her shoulder at them as she runs, struck by the sight of so many of the aquatic birds crowded together, until they start pushing each other off. Survival of the fittest. Don't they know it's only a matter of time, that either way they're doomed? She's appalled at the morbid thoughts her thoughts have been taking lately, the morbid turn her thoughts have been taking lately, especially after tonight's episode. She knows she has to make a decision, and it's weighing on her. She blinks, her vision clouding over with mist that seems to have appeared out of nowhere. It creates a film over the light from the century-old lampposts along the track that are visible where overgrown vegetation has not obscured them. Fog has begun to creep in, a harbinger of tomorrow's predicted heat wave. That will make the 3rd of this month. The moon has disappeared behind a cloud. It's pitch black now, not a single star in the sky. She feels the night settling over her like a shroud. The reservoir no longer shimmers with colorful reflections of the trees along the running track. It's become an opaque sheet, giving off a foul odor as the water laps against the pilings. The air feels heavier, with curling fingers of low-lying fog that makes it impossible to see 2 feet ahead. She slows down, slides her phone out of her pocket, shines it over the ground as she runs. Less than a quarter mile to go. Crushed gravel flies up from the track as she runs, the rising humidity making it hard to breathe. Her chest heaves with the effort. She pushes herself to go faster. The sounds of night are deafening now. The crickets and unceasing buzz in her head. She can hear the wind whistling through the treetops. A sharp stitch in her side forces her to stop. She doubles over, tries to catch her breath. When she can breathe without pain, she grits her teeth and starts running again. Footsteps pound behind her. Her heart leaps into her throat. The runner hurtles past, his hooded figure barely visible. Adrenaline surges through her. She sprints ahead, tells herself this isn't a contest. The only one she's competing against is herself. She can't see the runner anymore. He's been swallowed up in the mist. She hears footsteps again. When she looks over her shoulder, she can't see anything. The track is covered in fog. The footsteps are getting louder. Now they're right behind her. She veers off the track, loses her balance, and stumbles against the low metal fencing, half hidden in the dense vegetation. She drops her phone and wastes precious seconds searching for it on her hands and knees in the sharp pebbled gravel. When she finds the phone next to the gnarled trunk of a massive tree, she jumps to her feet and races through an opening in the fence that curves down to the bridle path. Then she's running again, out toward the 90th Street entrance, hurtling past picnic tables, benches, and a water fountain as she races out of the park, running against the stoplight across the deserted 5th Avenue up to 91st Street, sprinting past the Cooper Hewitt Museum and Spence School before crossing Madison. She leaves behind the white marble columns of the brick church on the corner of Park and 91st as she continues east, another landmark she has passed hundreds of times before. She keeps running and doesn't stop until she reaches her townhouse halfway down the block, where she takes the steps 2 at a time. I need a few minutes to get out of character. My old acting days, you have to leave the character behind when you finish performing, but it's hard to do that, especially when your character is part of you. Anyway, that's First Victim. That's my protagonist, Alice D. McCarty, the judge. And I wanted to give you a little sampling of her life and her interior world. A little bit in the courtroom, and then when she's running, because we know she's got a lot of stress she's dealing with. We just don't know exactly what it is yet. And I don't want to give any more away for those of you who might not have read the book. So if anyone has any questions or wants to know anything about my process, do ask. Hi, you are?
Sheila.
Hi, Sheila.
When you start to draft, do you have everything in place and you have a roadmap of where it's going? Or, like some writers, do you start and sort of tell you where it's going?
Okay, Sheila, right? Wants to know if I have a roadmap, if if I plot everything, which in this genre, many authors plot, because it's a plot-driven genre. I write from character, which is almost going against the grain, because characters, for me, propel the action. But in answer to your question, I almost brought my recorder, but I couldn't fit it in my pocketbook. I speak into a recorder as my characters start, as I said earlier, my characters start talking to me, and I listen to them, and that's how I learn about their worlds, their lives, their interior worlds as well. So that kind of leads me to the plot. So I would say that I don't map it out, but as I listen to the characters, I take it down into I speak into my recorder, not to sound too mystical, and then I input ideas, voices, things the character's telling me, and as I input it into the computer, that's not the writing yet. That's just all the thoughts, and then as I input, and many people have said, why don't you just have the program that puts the words on the page? I don't do that because new thoughts come as I input. And then new things happen, and the world opens up even more, and new characters come into the story. So I never really have a roadmap, but I do get to a point, because it's a thriller, and everyone expects twists and turns and surprises, where I do have to structure the story. Now that being said, there are many authors who tell you they start with a twist, and then they grow out from there and find the characters to fit the twist. I believe that the action has to grow organically out of the character, which I learned as an actress. Konstantin Stanislavski, the great Russian director, was my hero, and he said character is action. So every twist and turn should really grow organically out of character. So the long answer to your question is I have no roadmap. I'm a pantster. There's a pantster and a plotster, and right, and they always ask what you are. So I would say a pantser is someone who flies by the seat of their pants and then has to figure it out. A plotter meticulously outlines everything, and I don't do that because I find it too constricting. So it's all character for me. Yes?
I have two quick questions. I know your background, you were a copy editor.
Copywriter.
Copywriter. How did you make the transition from that to writing books, and how did that background help you?
From copywriting?
To writing books.
And what's your name?
Cindy Beckles.
Cindy. Hi, Cindy. So Cindy wants to know how I went from copywriting to writing my own book. Well, I had been an actress and a playwright, and I wrote dialogue. And then I met a woman in a bookstore. I was thinking of writing a Harlequin romance, and this woman was looking at the romances, and I didn't want her to think I would read a romance, because I'm not a romance reader. So I told her I was thinking of writing one, and she said, my sister is associate publisher at Harlequin, and they need copywriters. I said, what? She said, back cover. I said, don't editors write the back covers and flaps? She said, no. So I met her sister. I started, she ripped a back cover off the book and said, write it. I made a portfolio and I took it to every publishing house, and I started as a freelance copywriter. Then I was hired by Kensington to be their first ever copy director, where I would hire the freelancers and writers. And from there I went on to Penguin when it was, it's now Penguin Random House, but it was Penguin Putnam then. And I was the copy chief in charge of 100 titles a month, a staff of writers under me, and freelance writers. So there we were writing all the, catalogs, flap copy, everything. And I said to myself, I've always been a reader and a writer. So even though I've been a playwright, I always loved books, as I told you about the library story earlier. So I said to myself, I'm writing all this hype and selling copy folios of best-selling authors. I should just write my own book. So I did, and that was Saving Grace, my debut novel. And how did it inform my writing? Very interesting. I learned how to hone my craft because you're limited. You have to have maybe 150 words in a copy with a headline. So it really streamlined my writing, taught me how to pack as much exposition and information into as few sentences as possible, which is why I write very sparely. So copywriting really helped me. It helped with discipline and helped me hone my craft. Helped me very much. And dialogue from being a playwright helped me with the dialogue. Yes?
Did editors think you could go from being a copywriter into a book writer, into an author?
And what is your name?
Fran.
Fran.
Yeah.
Fran wants to know, did editors think I could go from copywriting to writing my own book?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if any of you know A.J. Finn, who wrote The Woman in the Window. I'll be on a panel with him in the Hamptons next month, which is very exciting. He was an editor of Random House. He submitted the book under an alias. That's why he used A.J. Finn. His name was Dan. And they bought it. He said if he'd given it to his editor, she would probably say, what, do you think you're a writer? So in answer to your question, editors, I don't know what they thought, because I didn't really speak to the editors. What I did was I sent my book out to agents, because I wanted to get an agent first to negotiate a deal for me. And I got an agent, and he sent it around to publishers. So really, and by then I had left Penguin to write, so they were not really involved except in the submission process, and they made an offer, but we didn't go with them. But they knew who I was by then. So that's an interesting question that they would, because editors sometimes think they can write books, and many editors have. But it's usually a different craft, editing versus writing. It's very different. So that's my story.
But you still have the same agent?
Actually, no. My agent died. Philip Spitzer, God rest his soul. He was Michael Connolly and James Lee Burke's agent. A wonderful human being, a lovely man. And so I've been with a new agent the last few years, Doug Brad. But what's interesting about Doug is he was an editor for 20 years, so we come full circle here. And then many editors have done this and become agents. Either they've been fired or they feel they could. He went out on his own, so he wears two hats. So he can help me when I send him my manuscript, because he was an editor. But he's lovely. He's a lovely human being, and he negotiates my deals for me.
How come you didn't write plays? If you were an actress.
I did write plays,
Oh, okay.
but I decided I needed to make a living. Not that books necessarily. In fact, there was somebody put on social media yesterday, all authors, we all know they all make under $10,000 a year, and it's only the 1% who make all the millions. So I did write plays, and I had some off and off Broadway, were in Boston and New York. But the other thing was, I felt that I was limited in plays to just dialogue. When I really like to write characters' inner thoughts and descriptions. It's almost like a first-person book. It's like a 400-page monologue. So I still love plays. Theater's still in my blood, as I love to perform. They should have had me do the order, really. But
Should have.
they didn't ask me. But yes, and I love to. Are you a theater lover too?
Yeah. I don't write.
You would love to attend. Do you go? Are you in New York or just Florida?
Down here.
There's a lot going on down here. I feel very grateful that I get to be here. I've discovered so much in Florida. Book clubs, libraries, speaking at North Palm Beach next week, and then at Society for Arts in April. There's so much going on down here. It's really great. And a lot of readers. So many readers.
It used to be huge. I remember we got huge crowds at these things. You had to get on a wait list and everything, but people are afraid to go.
Adam told me that before COVID, they had at least 100 people at each event. But I was at an event in East Hampton in 2021, and they did hybrid, live stream and in person. 2 people showed up. Everyone else was afraid.
Yeah. Well.
And people are still, everyone's wearing masks in my building.
Well, and even that, they don't know about this because there's no anything going on. The theater is half full. The opera is half full.
I know. That's true.
It's too bad.
I know. But hopefully things will turn around, begin to turn around.
If the concerts came back for younger people, then they would maybe venture out. But even, my children, they don't go to anything.
Oh, same with my friends in New York. They're not going to any theater. In fact, I don't belong to TDF anymore. I don't go to anything. I used to go to everything.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about a book. You don't have to go out.
I know.
But it's hard,
I know. It's true. Very true. Well, that's why I love libraries, Kenny. That's why I was telling the story about getting my first library card and loving libraries, and then I wrote a lot of saving grace in the library. Yeah. Yes?
Are they going to be making a movie out of the first one, Saving Grace?
Saving Grace will also be a limited series, but I'm actually working, what is your name?
Judy.
Hi, Judy. I feel like we've met before, haven't we?
No.
Well, you look very familiar.
Yeah.
But I'm doing First Victim first. That's the one I was asked to do the pilot for first. And then we'll get to Saving Grace. It's interesting because Saving Grace is 2 time periods, and the Hollywood agent feels that would make a great limited series of 10 episodes. Because you have 2 time periods.
Right.
And First Victim will probably be 6 to 8 episodes.
Wonderful. I'll be looking forward to that.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's a different way of writing. I have to get back to the
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about that in a minute, the big difference between the two. Yes.
Yes, hi, I'm Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
And it's a 2-part question. Your characters, how do you come up with them? Is it just out of your imagination, life experience? I'm sure they live with you, as you said. And also, what really, I am so impressed by people that have such a full plate. Young children, families, so much going on in their lives, yet still they write a ton of books.
Right.
So with time management, what's your schedule like that you can sit down and write? What advice you would give to people that have a hard time with, time management?
So the time management, I'll answer the second part of your question first. That's a very good question, and it's hard. It's hard because the publisher now expects a book a year. And there are many writers who do that. Michael Connolly, Harlan Coben. I think they just sit down and start writing. In fact, Michael Connolly, because we shared an agent, his agent told me the story about he was never taking any vacations or exercising. So now he walks on his treadmill while he's typing it up. But time management is a very good question because I don't write fast. And as I said earlier, I speak it to my recorder. That's not the writing. It takes forever till I finally do the first draft, and then that's just the first draft. And my editor actually said that she feels she almost gets a finished product, as opposed to some writers will send what they call a hot mess, and then it has to be totally rewritten. I will still rewrite though.
Yeah.
In fact, my 3rd book is not coming out until spring 2024. Because the editor and agent loved it, and I said, it needs work, I'm rewriting it. I was shocked that they loved it, and I said, no. So, as a result, it couldn't come out this coming summer, 2023, and I didn't want the fall, so wait until the next year. So, because I don't write fast, and I would rather do a book every 2 years, and then you have the rest of your life you have to deal with as well, I would like to learn to manage my time better, actually. Because I was thinking, maybe I don't have to talk into my recorder, maybe I could just talk this and that. So I would say that the advice I would give is maybe carve out time in the day and say, this is what I'm going to do today. I know some writers who say they have to write 1,000 words a day, and they don't stop until they do. I don't do that because I'm not always just doing the writing, I'm doing the other things in the recorder. So I would say if you could carve out time and say, this is the sacrosanct time that I'm going to work, the writing, nothing else, if you can, and then try to schedule other things around it and use your best energy time if you can. If you have a full-time job, of course, you can't help that. But if your work hours are flexible, maybe for me, the mornings are my best energy. I'm not as good in the afternoon or evening. So maybe if you say I'm going to work 8 to 12 or 6:30 to 10:30 and try to find a way to carve things out. It's hard. Bless you. It's hard, but you have to find a way. If you're a fast writer, it helps. It helps if you can just do a book a year and just start writing the book. But that's what I would say. But try to write every day. Try not to skip a day. Like today, I said, oh, I'm getting ready. I have this event. When will I write? So I was up at 4 actually, but I got up at 5:30 and I worked from like 7:30 to 9. And at least I did something. So I would say you should do something every day. Even if you rewrite or you throw it away. Yes. Cindy?
Yes,
Didn't that
it
say the second
What was
part?
that?
Oh, wait, that was the first part again? How the characters are.
How do you come up with it?
Well,
They come to you.
I know I was saying that, and I don't want to sound too mystical say when they start talking to me, but they actually do. I actually started, and that's why in Saving Grace, she was an 11-year-old orphan from the South, and everyone said to me, have you ever been to the South? Northwest Arkansas? I said, no. Well, how did you know? Like, I just knew who she was, this 11-year-old orphan, and she's showing me her town, and it's called Repentance, it's a Baptist town. And I realized, and then girls are going missing, and then her adult voice started talking to me because it goes back and forth in time. So, and that really, she came to me in a voice. In fact, the 11-year-old voice was even stronger than the adult voice. That took a while to percolate. Alice I knew because I saw a courtroom, and I saw a woman walking in with a black robe. I said, well, she must be the judge. And then she went home, and she was on the phone, and she was having trouble at home, and she had a family, and that's how it all works that way for character, and then the story takes shape. And
Do they match the first book? Anybody in either both books?
no, in fact, I was thinking they're not, but I was thinking of a prequel and a sequel to Saving Grace, because I have ideas for both. And I would like to get back to Mary Grace Dobbs. She still talks to me. But no, they're not related. They're totally different characters.
Because the authors you mentioned who have a book a year, they should do the same character.
Often. Connolly has the Lincoln lawyer, and now he's the brother-in-law of Harry Bosch. But, it's interesting because my agent, I'm having an ongoing conversation with him about this. I have an idea for a series that actually will take place in Florida about a female lawyer. And I think it's a great idea for a series. And my editor does too. My agent said, no, you're getting known for suspense, standalone. You can't just start a series. I said, why not? Especially if people like a character and relate to the character. So I think he's wrong. And don't you go back to books over and over when it's a character you want?
Yes and no. What's happened though, I don't want to mention name, but Jeffrey Archer, he writes the same book. Over and over again. I mean, the same scenes, the same things happening.
It makes a lot of money too.
I know, it's the same story, and I stopped reading it, But then again, some of them are fabulous.
Well, that makes you return. See, when you really are invested in a character, I feel like that's a built-in readership, which I think is important. Which I like that idea. Look at all the series that are so popular. And there's Agatha Christie, of course. Interesting. So I hope I answered your question.
I have questions.
Yes.
I have two questions, actually. What do you do when you have writer's block? What is your strategy? Because a lot of people have books that are half written. So I want to know when you have that difficult time, how you overcome that.
Okay, the question is, what do I do to combat writer's block? I don't usually get writer's block. I don't usually have a problem with the blank page. I have a problem with too many ideas and too many things happening. And I used to write before the recorder, I wrote everything on a pad. But I got sick of having to put down the pad and get off the machine at the gym. And I would have an arrow here and an arrow here and then a thought here, and then it doesn't mean that would be the book. But it's almost like an actor doing improvisation. You do all these different exercises and then you streamline it for the book. So I don't really ever get writer's block. I have so many characters in my head. Never lonely.
And my other question is, there are so many conferences out there on books and for authors. Are there any particular conferences or author gatherings that you have found helpful in your career in this industry?
That's a good question. There are many writers' conferences. Do I find any helpful? In fact, there's one going on right now in New York City called Pitch Fest. They have it every year. Catherine Sands is there, my friend who's a nonfiction agent. And there's Left Coast Crime might be going on right now. Now, I have not been to either of those because I've been so, to tell you the truth, I've been so busy writing and posting on social media because the publisher says you have to do this, and they don't really do it much. You have to do it all yourself. And and events, so I really don't have time. However, I was supposed to go to, have you heard of BoucherCon? Okay, BoucherCon was named after, I believe he was either a mystery author, Anthony Boucher. BoucherCon's the most famous. Every year it's somewhere else. I was supposed to go 2 years ago because it was in New Orleans. I think it was 2021. And my husband said, well, maybe we shouldn't go. Everyone was still wearing masks, everyone was still sick. They canceled it at the end because the whole hotel came down with COVID. So that's a big one. It's every September now. This year they're going to be in San Diego. BoucherCon, I can give you, it's BoucherCon. Another big one that I have attended is called Thriller Fest. It's in New York City every year. It's always been at the Hyatt, but now it's at the Sheraton. This year it'll be, I think, May 31st to June 4th, where it's run by the international authors, I forgot the name.
Thriller Writers.
Thank you, Thriller Writers. Oh my God, this happens sometimes to me. ITW. International Thriller Writers is a group that started by authors, so there are no annual dues. Like Mystery Writers has it, and Sisters in Crime all have annual dues. No annual dues, it's all writers. But when you go to Thriller Fest, even when you're on a panel and all the famous authors come, you have to pay as an author because they have to get their money somewhere. But what's good about Thriller Fest is they have Pitchcraft and Agent Fest and Pitch Fest, where attendees who want to have their works read do like a speed dating with agents, and they have 5 minutes to show a piece of their manuscript. So a lot of would-be writers go to that. It's 5 days. There's a big banquet dinner at the end. There are panels. You can go to all the panels, and you can meet with agents. My agent will be there doing that speed agent thing. And I know many writers who are going to go and do a pitch fest there where you can also pitch some of your manuscript. So that Thriller Fest is very good, always in New York City. And BoucherCon and Left Coast, I'm told Left Coast Crime is good.
Iceland.
Oh, I just heard this year. Iceland Noir, if you're a noir writer, all the Swedish noir books that are so popular. Every October, a fellow author of mine gave me a blurb. She's a wonderful writer. She took all these pictures. She was there last October. Oh my God, it's freezing. She was like swimming there. Oh my God. Anyway, it's big, and they get big names there too. It's called Iceland Noir. And I'm not sure how that works with writers, but there's something, I would say look up writers' conferences. You'll see something probably every month. Yes?
I have 2 questions.
Everyone has 2 questions.
The social media, is there a preferred Instagram or just everything that's out there? And the second question is, do you need your personal website or do you work as part of the publisher's website?
Good, 2 good questions. I'll answer the first question first, which is social media. Which do you recommend of all the social media? They're all very important. Most people go on Instagram because that's very photo-driven. Instagram is very good. You put your link in your bio because you may not be able to put a link to something on it, That's number 1 probably. And Facebook, which is the parent, is number 2. They both do reels, which are very big now. I won't say TikTok. Well, we know what's going on with TikTok. But I'm on it, and I do not really like it that much. I see a lot of young people doing, I don't know, silly things on it. I don't really care for it. Twitter, I would say, is number 3. Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But Twitter's also good. Short, but you can put your picture on. But Instagram and Facebook, you'll get a lot of responses. And then the second question was the website. No, publishers have their own website. They expect authors to create their own. So I do have my own website. Well, they expect you have to pay for your own website. Publishers will pay for certain things. Maybe they'll send you on a book tour. Maybe, they print distribute your book everywhere, so they feel they're spending a lot of money. So yes, authors have their own websites that they design through a designer or themselves.
Website, okay. You have a website?
Yes, debbiebabbitt.com. Make sure you spell my last name right. The reason I say that is the computer keeps auto-correcting it to two B's in the middle, like the Sinclair Lewis book. It's one B in the middle. And they even do it wrong on social media. It's like, and then I don't get any hashtags because my name's spelled wrong. Yes.
There are a lot of authors down here. Is there a group where you all get together at a time, or is there anything for the authors who live here too?
That's a good thought. I think that would be wonderful to explore. I think there should be. We could all meet each other. I mean, next week at the library, I'm doing something called Writers Week. This is Writers Live, and I know Dennis Lehane was here. I would like to meet him, which is
Well,
wonderful.
he didn't even live here,
But he was here. But authors who that's fair. You know, I'm going to tell you, they had something last year called Book and Bites through another library where they honored an author who's been a best-selling author for many years. I forget, Kate White, maybe. She used to be a Cosmopolitan editor. And you had to pay money to have a lunch with her, and other authors came.
but
But
they do that for Oakdale.
do they?
Yeah, they
Really?
have, you buy them, you don't buy it, but that's how they do their book talk. You have a round table of 8 people,
Right.
author.
Right.
And you talk and you have the lunch, and then there are about 10 different authors there with 10 tables. But I mean, just among the authors themselves.
That would be great. I would love to meet with authors. That would be a lot of fun.
Well,
We
they-
should think about that. A round table with a bunch of authors.
We'll call you.
That'd be great.
Murder on the Beach, which was in Delray.
I love that bookstore, and it closed.
I know, she used to always have 4 or 5 different
I know.
people in, and they would talk, you know.
I remember Alfred Burke was there, and she was like, I know. There are no, I know, in Classic Bookshop, but they don't do it there. That's why I'm going to be at Society for Artists. The Society is where they do theirs at the King Library there. But they have too small a store. Although when Saving Grace came out, I signed the books, they put it on a beautiful stand.
Oh.
James Patterson came in, so we had a great talk, and you know, he always comes in to see his books.
Well, they do it up in Vero, but, you know.
Vera?
Yeah, he still has things. It's like a classic bookstore, but up in Vero instead of the one.
Is that far from here? Is that far?
It's about an hour and a half or so.
Well, I've been going to bookstores. I've been doing book signings at all the Barnes and Nobles too, and Boca.
There aren't that many.
There aren't that many. I know. That would be an interesting idea to do like a round table. Because when I do panels, I'm on panels, like the one I'm doing in the Hamptons in April, I'm on panels with other authors, and that's a lot of fun.
Well, what's coming up? I mean, when is the book fair is over? That's in November, the Miami.
Book fair?
Yeah, that's huge.
I know, we were talking about that earlier.
And then they had a mystery one in Deerfield Beach.
Really?
Out there, they used to do it. But I don't think they do it anymore. I never see anything. And that's how you meet authors, you buy their books, and you become a fan.
No, and also get blurbs. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. I got all my own blurbs.
Yeah.
The publisher didn't get any. I wrote to authors myself.
Yeah.
But I like that idea.
Can I ask you a question about Robert?
Yes.
I love your description of Central Park and how, I know you're character-driven, but how important is the setting in specifically New York in writing from?
That's an interesting question because I just posted today, a book company called Early Bird's Book just posted something about 10 mystery books set in New York City and mine was in there where it's setting, the city locale becomes a character. So yes, setting is actually very important for me, and in this case, the reservoir really resonated for me in terms of Alice being afraid and this runner behind her, and then as dusk falls and fog, it can be really scary. So yes, setting is important, and I do work on that as well and study it. And that's the other thing, is you have to get your setting right. My originally in First Victim and in Saving Grace. Saving Grace, the town is called Repentance, based on a real town called Jasper in northwest Arkansas. in First Victim, Lowood in North Country, New York, is based on a town called Lowville, which is famous for the cream cheese factory. Well, my editor said, you have to give these towns fictitious names, because there'll always be a reader who's going to write in and say, you got that street wrong, and that's not where that happened. Joseph Finder talks about that all the time. So I wanted to make it the real reservoir, New York. So New York City was real, but I had to make the upstate town not real. So setting is important, but you have to get all those details right. It's unbelievable that the readers will write in what they read. I hope I answered your question. Did you ask me something else? Okay.
Jenny, what about the snowstorm, Saving Grace?
That accuracy. Now, that's a good story. So I set Saving Grace, my first book, in Northwest Arkansas. And I don't know how many of you read it, but a blizzard figures very prominently. Well, who's the distributor, Northern Publisher, they're also a distributor. Their sales rep said, I lived in Northwest Arkansas and it never snowed. My editor says, well, we can do one of two things. Take out the blizzard. I said, I can't. It's important. Okay, because there's a missing girl. Okay, we can't take out the blizzard. She said, then could you make it a fake state? I said, what? She said, a fake town and a fake state. I said, now listen. I've heard of fake towns. But even in our town, by Thornton Wilder, Grover's Corners was in New Hampshire. I'm not going to have a state that's not real. So what did I do? We researched and researched. What did she find? But snowstorms in Arkansas. And 2 years earlier, 24 inches. So, but this is what I mean about people saying, well, we know better than you. See, when you're right, you have to really be careful.
What did you do as an actress? What did you do as an actress?
I mean, where did I perform? New York, Boston, theater. I did some petite modeling. Does anyone remember Cliff Robertson?
Sure.
Okay. So do you remember Charlie? Well, they were making Charlie 2 in Boston when I graduated college, and I moved there. And I was cast as a South Boston teenager, and I had to work up an accent. An accent. But anyway, it ended up not getting made. They lost the funding and et cetera, so that would maybe launched me. But by then I was going back to New York and thinking acting really, I was always rewriting my lines, and I said, you know what, this might not be right for me. Even though I love performing, I love talking, being on that stage and everyone watching me. So I really didn't stay in it that long. And I went to college with a guy named John Turturro. I'm sure you've heard of him. We were good friends. We did all these plays together. And he said, I'll put you in my movies just like my brother Nicky and his cousin Aida, who was in The Sopranos. And I could have had a career then too, but I realized writing was really what I wanted to be doing. But it was a good segue because of the character, being character-driven.
Now you're a successful writer.
Thank you very much. And I love talking to people. I know. It's like, I can break into song too. Any other questions? One more question?
But a comment, it's very inspiring for people to know that even in life, and you can, no matter what stage you are at, your dreams can be fulfilled. Because this is just, it's going to be your third book, right?
Yes.
So this took you how many years before you started your career in writing?
That's a good question. How many years? Well, I was always writing. But when I stopped acting, I was trying to figure out what to do. So I ended up writing plays and then segueing into reading plays for literary agents till I became a copy tutor. So I guess I've always been writing. But friends from childhood have been writing to me on social media and saying, oh, this is your second act.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of the third act.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. So I would say that I've been writing for many, many years while doing other things.
But just not your books wasn't published.
Yeah, it wasn't really, that's true. I had written some books that I didn't do anything with. I'd written 2 manuscripts that I just said, I don't know. And I may go back to those now that newer books. That's a good question. That's actually good. That's true. I was right. I did write, but I didn't feel they were ready to present to agents.